Welcome, welcome. Looks like everybody is herding in here. Start at about 1 to 2 more minutes. And as we're getting started, I think we're going to have a couple hundred or so on the call today. So probably important that we check to make sure that you can hear me, and maybe John, you can type in too. You'll be the most important today, and that you can see our screen. So looks like Russ on our team already knows the drill, so he's already raised his hand. So perfect.
Good job, Russ.
All good. Thank you, thank you. I always say it's the most stressful part of the webinar, and that is actually true. So I appreciate that. Thanks, everybody. Good, good. Wait just another minute or two. People are still joining. Well, I think we're going to go ahead and get started for the benefit of everybody's time here. I have a bit of ground to cover. And welcome. I am Brian Klontz, President of Charitable Solutions. Got my partner, John Severson, on the call. He's going to be doing most of the heavy lifting today, going through some of the interesting applications for CGA. And you can see this isn't your grandfather's CGA, so you'll definitely know that probably about 2 slides in. And we're going to be talking about 3 advanced gift annuity applications. And so a couple things before we get started. I do a bit of a propaganda blurb here. But to take a half a step back, many people sort of know us for certain services and in many cases not for others. And I've done, I would give myself a D job on a good day of sort of marketing the breadth of odd things that we do. So the first thing is I started Charitable Solutions in 2003 with a specific mission that has never changed, and that is to help make charitable gifts happen that otherwise wouldn't. And so in particular around areas that there are risk and ways of potentially being able to mitigate that risk, lubricate the process, and to allow gifts to occur that otherwise would be declined. And so that's sort of my personal mission, and we've got a wonderful team of 16, adding 2 more hopefully by the end of this month as part of the overall firm across these various service areas. So sort of going top right to left, one is the Emergency Assistance Fund Administration, and so there's a lot of risk relative to disaster relief and personal hardship grants. So I created 10 years ago almost exactly the Emergency Assistance Foundation, and we currently do a very, very large, totally separate charity, very large activity. We've got 135 staff and just doing grants, global grants. We did 178,000 grants last year for COVID relief, but work with 300 plus companies. I think we're at 335 right now. And it's about 10.5 million employees worldwide. So that's what we do on that side. And again, it's all around risk. So relative to donors being able to make contributions to a public charity fund, and then to have that fund itself being able to make grants almost exclusively back to that employer's employee base without it being compensation. And so it's both tax deductible going in by the corporation, the foundation, or employees or vendors, anybody for that matter. And then are also tax-free grants to the impacted employees. So do a lot in that space. I'll jump around here. Bottom right, Professional Advisor CE. So still doing a lot of those, maybe 3 to 4 of those webinars per week now. I'm so excited. I just planned my first trip for the end of August. We'll see if that works out, but that's been a year and a half, and my lovely family keeps saying, you know, Daddy, aren't you supposed to be going away sometime soon? Which is, I guess, nice that they want to get rid of me, especially right around Father's Day, but it will be nice sort of get back on the road and see many of you, frankly, personally. So do that for advisors, for board, staff, nonprofit, donor speeches. So typically we'll do a number of those in one day, certainly on site, or to sort of chop it up by webinars. And a number of the other members of the team do this as well. Sort of middle top, charitable gift annuity risk management. Not so much the topic today, but obviously still around gift annuities. And we do a fair number, maybe 10 to 15 a year, of gift annuity risk audits, usually on larger pools, 10 million plus. We have 2 actuaries on staff, so I've done that for about 20 years or so now. In particular, looking at cash flow modeling and usually large gift annuities, so other concentrated risk. We do reinsurance brokerage, design, placement where appropriate. So spend a lot of our what intellectual capital we have, but in that sort of space, speaking and writing and doing papers, et cetera, sort of around the gift annuity risk area. Then we do virtual currency and life insurance appraisals. So I do those in addition to audits and done that for a long time. And for those of you who were on last month's webinar, our new big service, sort of the reveal, is we now have Charitable Appraisal Solutions, LLC. And so we have now 4 appraisers on staff that will do for art, wine, intellectual property, promissory notes, any kind of business interest, fractional interest in real estate, restricted stock, precious metals, so diamonds, other jewelry. So the bottom line is we've worked with a number of them over time, and rather than sort of piecemealing all of that out, in essence, package that, we only do charitable qualified appraisals. That's it, and do that nationally. So we got this team of now 5, plus myself, so I guess 6, doing that so people don't have to scramble around. Still usually a good idea to go back through the donor's CPA or attorney. Certainly feel free to do that, but I used to have a lot of hair and actually identifying appraisers, frankly, coaching them about the unique characteristics of qualified appraisal rules for charitable gifts. And frankly, we spent a lot of time coaching them around strategies and tactics to mitigate discounts, in particular for fractional interest gifts, that I kind of got to the point like, why not just create a group to do that? So in any event, again, we only do charitable appraisals, sort of a one-trick thing there. Non-cash asset risk management, so that's by far the bulk of what we do. We do both consulting to charities directly for any kind of illiquid or complex gift, and that's maybe 5% or so of our time. And then many of you know that we have the Decami Foundation, a national donor-advised fund, and Decami Asset Trust, another donor-advised fund. National Donor Advice Fund. We have, I think, 21-ish single-member LLCs underneath those. So we have this sort of heavy schematic entity relationship. But the bottom line is that if any of you have clients or any of you have donors, as you know, that are offering what we call a good asset, the donor wants to do good things, and there's sort of a high enough value there as well, then rather than declining that because maybe there's a tax issue, maybe it's an international gift, maybe there's some kind of weird ownership structure, maybe it's a super quick turn, which is our particular specialty, rather than doing that, you can refer that over. You can see there we've done $1.6 billion now through that foundation. 100% of those gifts were initially declined. 100%. We did $403 million last year in exactly 100 donations. Average fee there you can see is 1.6%. And then most importantly, we only take in illiquid gifts, and we never manage anything that's liquid. So once it's liquid, 30 days after we receive settlement proceeds, do our fund internal compliance, working with appraisers, internal audit, et cetera. We then make a grant, less our fee, to the charity or charities that the donor was trying to give it to in the first place. We've already done 50 donations. We were at about 30 last year at this time. So you can see last year our average donation was about $4 million per, and that's been pretty consistent the last 3 years. So we've done well over $1 billion in the last 36 months. So that it is crazy amount of volume in the real estate space, in the privately held business space, and then certainly a lot of noise, not a ton of transactions, but in the crypto space. We're going to talk about the Crypto CGA today too. So tons of non-cash asset work. And finally, really the bulk of today's conversation will be around the National Gift Annuity Foundation. And so I hope many of you know, but we are licensed in 49 states, everywhere except for Hawaii. Same thing like Decami, where again, if it's a risky CGA, if it's a large one, if it's an estate that the charity is not otherwise registered in, if it's a charity that just doesn't want to do CGAs and wouldn't have a pool large enough, you can see there we have, and I need to update those numbers a bit, but 582 contracts. I think we're just under 600 at this point, about 44 million in assets. By the way, the Decamai Foundation currently has now, I think it's about 740 million in assets, all illiquid, all awaiting sale. And that only represents about 130 funds. So these tend to be very large, about 6-7 million per internal. So the point is it's roughly about 800 million now in total assets, all of which are awaiting deployment to the charity or charities the donor was trying to give it to. So we are just a giant pass-through donor-advised fund, still all the appropriate compliance and regulation there. But Gift Annuity Foundation, 100% of the residuum is granted to the charity or charities that the donor was trying to give to. And we do all of the sausage making, both on the non-cash side, but also on the gift annuity side. So we have the joy of all of the state compliance. We do all the 1099s. The liability is on our book, so it's only at the end where that gift annuity is granted back. And so that's it. That's us going back to the mission. We help make charitable gifts happen that otherwise wouldn't, and that's always been my passion. And so all these little ornaments on the tree all go to that exact mission. So again, one of my partners, John Severson, is here. Is going to take us through most of it today. John, I guess you want to flip to your bio. I am not going to go through. Oh, you actually must have cut the bio out. So I will give John's bio. So John's actually, I'm sorry. I'll do the agenda, then the bio. So we're going to talk about the impact annuity. I know I flipped it. Impact annuity, calling that the Now-N-Later. Testamentary CGA, or the TCGA in particular, as it relates to the Stretch IRA conundrum and challenges there. And then the Crypto CGA, I'll be talking through that one. So that's coming up more and more for insane volatility in that space, and some people wanting to sort of bank the gains. And then at the end, we'll talk about so the next month's webinar that we already have planned, any Q&A that you have as we go through, and some next steps. And you can see the disclaimer. Everybody take the time to read the disclaimer. So I should say, too, we do not send out slides. Many of you may know that. We've had some nefarious uses of our slides, unfortunately, but this will be, as all of our other webinars from last year, sent out via link on the Charitable Solutions LLC.com website under Resources and Webinars. We have all of our past webinars. They're all free. You don't have to sign up or anything. So this one, either this one or the one on Thursday, whichever one's best, will be posted there. So don't sue us. We're giving free webinars. There you go. So now the slide I thought was going to happen before. So partner John Severson, John and I have worked together, I want to say at least 7 or 8 years, could be 10 for all I know, so a long time. John was a fee-only planner for a long, long time, spent a lot of his practice in the charitable planning area in particular. Has definitely done more CRTs than I've ever done in my entire career. But it has the CAP, CFP, AEP designations, but really has a passion around helping charities develop plan giving programs, and more particularly and specifically around the CGA space. And so he's come on vice president of our National Gift Annuity Foundation to help support those charities that wish to do that. So with that, John, I'll turn it over to you, and we'd love any questions as we go along. If you don't mind, if you just post that in the Q&A section. For those of you who have attended past webinars, we take all of the questions and answers from each of the 2 webinars that we do. We mush them, and then when that comes out as the final slide link, we include all Q&A there. If you would like it to be confidential, totally fine. We won't put it in there, but that would give you the benefit of both the Q&A from today and obviously the one on Thursday too. So feel free to post those. I'll be typing as John goes through the first 2 of the advanced solutions, and then I'll be the caboose with the Crypto CGA. So, John, take us away.
Very good, Brian. Well, welcome everyone. First, more advanced CGA technique. I actually picked up on a CGP webinar earlier this year from our friends at the University of Pennsylvania, where they were talking about an impact annuity, which I had never heard of. Well, let's learn about an impact annuity. It really solves a problem. And from a financial planner's perspective, which is where my life has been spent, I like to help the donors and clients solve problems, especially if it involves providing a resource to charity at the end. So here's the problem that this impact annuity can solve. is you want your donor to say yes to a campaign pledge ask, but they don't necessarily have the cash flow right now to fund it. But they may also be sitting on a non-productive asset. Can we do something to help both of you? Well, you can actually help them now and you later at the same time with a guaranteed tax favored retirement income for life through a gift annuity. And so it's the now and later solution. You may have had that candy flow through your house at one time or another. So here's the deal. It's really a blended gift. We're combining a traditional CGA with an outright gift of the annuity payments to charity for a specified term of years. So it's kind of like hooking a CRT and a CLT together, but it's a lot simpler than that. So once the gift annuity is established, the donor can direct those annuity payments to your organization, and they can use it to help fund their campaign pledge. And it also keeps them in control. They can fund it, help fund a scholarship or some kind of endowment fund. So we're kind of blending a current gift with a planned gift in the form of a gift annuity that we're diverting the income stream temporarily. Usually we're going to do that for a period of 3 to 5 years, kind of consistent with what you're doing as far as taking campaign pledges. So here's how it works. The donor sets up a CGA and they're going to receive their one-time receipt for the normal CGA deduction based on their age and the current AFR and so on. They're going to get that 1099 at the end of the year for their annuity income beginning in year 1. But they're also going to get a tax deduction each year for that annual gift that they're giving, redirecting that payment from their gift annuity to it back to the charity instead of taking it themselves, but in their own bank account. So the annuity administrator is simply going to send the payment back to the charity for a period of years. Then the annuitant's going to receive a receipt each year for that cash gift. It's as if they wrote a check, but they didn't have to write the check. They simply redirected their CGA payment to the charity. And so they're going to still receive an annual gift receipt for that gift. And you can redirect for as many years as they wish, usually 3 to 5. You could, the way we're setting it up at National Gift Annuity Foundation, you could actually start and stop it. You could do a series of these if you wish. It's just simply a side agreement with us to redirect those annuity payments. So here's an example. So let's say we have a donor who's age 70. I kind of resemble that. $50,000, and we're going to put that in a single life annuity. The current rate's 4.7%. So that's $2,350 a year. You've approached them, I'm making a $10,000 gift to your campaign and spread that over 5 years. Well, if we're going to get $2,350 out of this $50,000 gift annuity, that'll provide a little over $10,000 if we redirect those payments for the next 5 years to the charity itself, to the campaign. But the first year, this donor is going to get a charitable deduction for the gift annuity funding itself of $19,907, being the present value of the future remainder based on life expectancy going to charity. That's just a standard gift annuity. But then in addition, as we redirect those payments annually to the charity for the next 5 years, charity is going to receive that donor for another $2,350 each of those years. So it's not a double deduction, but it kind of is, but it's not really any different than if the donor received the check in the mail and put it in their bank account and wrote a check to the charity to satisfy their campaign pledge. But it's a smooth little package that you can really help get people's attention and go from talking about an annual gift or a major gift into a planned gift all at the same time. Thus, it's a blended type gift, okay? So how do we do that? You just simply have a separate letter of instruction indicating this is how this works on top of the 3-page regular charitable gift annuity contract. So here's what the letter of instruction has to say. The charity is going to receive the annuity amount payable to the annuitant. If you're issuing your own gift annuities, you're simply going to keep it. If you're doing gift annuities for others, you're going to send that payment to another charity. And then each payment's going to be acknowledged as received by the recipient charity on an annual basis. And then you're going to accept an annuity payment as a charitable contribution, just like you would if the donor wrote you a check. Here's what the donor is going to do. Defined in this agreement, it says they're going to define the dates for the annuity payments to be directed to the charity. I'm going to do this for the next 3 years. I'm going to do it for the next 4 years. I'm going to do it for a year and a half. Whatever I, as the donor, are willing to redirect my annuity payments on my new annuity, I'm going to redirect those to charity for a specific purpose. I, as the donor, I'm going to be taxed on my annuity payments at favorable rates. I'm going to get a 1099-R. If I happen to fund it with cash, a large portion of that for the first number of years is going to be tax-free, like any annuity payment would be. And then in the agreement, I reserve the right to modify or cancel the impact annuity payments, because I'm in charge. I'm the donor. I'm just sharing my annuity payments with my favorite charity or charities. Okay. So here's what this problem that it solves. First of all, we're turning an unproductive asset, maybe it's a certificate deposit that's going to renew for about 0.9% if you're lucky, and to an income producing asset that's going to produce somewhere between 4 and 5 or 8%, depending on the age of the annuitant or the annuity donor. That we're going to get a substantial tax deduction this year and the year that the annuity is created, equal to the present value of the future remainder. We would get that if we set up a gift annuity anyway. And we're allowing us to say yes and make a current campaign gift to your organization where I may have said no because I didn't feel I had the cash flow to make that commitment. And I'm going to additionally receive a tax deduction each year for the annuity gift that I'm redirecting to charity. So there's your now and later kind of a promotion of this. And the later part, we're going to provide a lifetime income stream through our CGA to the donor. And we're going to receive partially tax-free annuity payments. We like those kind of income streams as a donor. And we're also making a planned gift to one of our favorite charities, all at the same time. So there's your now and later. Well, let's do a quick example of this. We got Tom Johnson. He's now age 65. He's a retired professional. He has a $50,000 low income producing certificate deposit, just rolled over, ready to mature. He wants to make a capital campaign gift to your campaign, but just doesn't feel he has the current cash flow to do it. And he would like to have some lifetime income, but he isn't quite ready for it yet, but he'd like to have that later. And he really does want to make a planned legacy gift to your organization. So here's how this works. He takes a certificate deposit that's maturing and finds a charity is going to issue an impact gift annuity, which is just a regular gift annuity. But he's going to have sign a side agreement that's going to, for the first 5 years, to direct those annuity payments back to the charity itself. Okay, so we execute the actual CGA contract itself and the side agreement. When he does that, in the year in which he funds this, he's going to receive that immediate charitable deduction equal to the present value of the future remainder out of the CGA. And then he's going to, the charity is going to receive those annual payments that he redirected for the next 5 years towards his campaign. And so now he's fulfilling his campaign pledge. And at the end of that period, he cancels his side agreement and the payments start coming back to him for the rest of his life. Now, at National Gift Annuity Foundation, when we set these up, if 3 years later he wants to redirect his income to another campaign, he can do that. If he doesn't need the income for some reason, that's up to him. It's just a separate agreement. Now, at Mr. Johnson's death, what happens? The remainder in the CGA passes directly or stays right with the charity, just like any normal CGA. So there's your planned gift. It's easy to implement. You just simply create a CGA and then you set up this side letter of instruction. And here's what that needs to include. First of all, the annuity amount payable to the annuitant, which is going to be whatever the gift annuity is, and then direct that payment to be paid to the charity. And then the annuitant, is good to put in the agreement that the annuitant understands that they're going to get a 1099 for the annuity payments, even though they aren't receiving those payments. It's as if they did receive them from a 1099 perspective. And then the charity is going to provide, acknowledgement of each gift and count that as a charitable contribution, as annually that payment comes into the charity for their campaign pledge. And you also want to define the kind of the term of this redirection of the charity in the side agreement. And the side agreement can then be terminated or changed by the donor. So they're going to reserve the right to modify or cancel those payments if for some reason they think they can't continue. Then it's kind of like it couldn't continue with a regular pledge. So the donor is really in control of this, but they feel that you help them solve a couple of problems, and it's a nice little package. Okay. So with that, we're going to shift to our advanced idea number 2, which is kind of a summary of what we presented last year. We did a whole hour on this on a webinar last summer. And remember, we introduced a testamentary charitable gift annuity, which is a solution to all the things that took place in the Secure Act of 2019 as it pertained to leaving IR assets to the next generation. Remember, the Secure Act had 3 main changes regarding charitable giving. It removed restrictions on IRA contributions after you're age 70. It changed the RMD date from 70 and a half to 72, but it maintained the charitable IRA rollover eligibility at age 70 and a half. But what I want to focus on is it eliminated the stretch IRA for non-spousal beneficiaries. Remember the stretch IRA that said, if I leave my IRA to my kids or my grandkids and they're 30 years old when I die, they can stretch those payments out and pay tax on it over their lifetime. Well, guess what? That's been replaced. Now they have to take it out within a 10-year period. They don't have to take it each year for 10 years. They could take it the first day, or they can take it right up to the 10th year, but it all has to come out to them as ordinary income in the year in which they receive it. And for some heirs, that's not a good thing, because it has to be paid out in that short period and not stretched over their lifetime. There are certain exceptions for disabilities and minor children. Now you think about it from the heir's perspective. You know, if I'm an heir, this wouldn't be so bad. I'll just ignore the tax consequences. And if mom and dad or grandma and grandpa leave me a nice IRA, yeah, I'll have to pay some tax on it, but I sure have an eye on that classic car or that new boat, or I'd sure like to take that trip to Puerto Vallarta. Well, I think we can even solve that for the donor using this new arrangement. So the new beneficiary distribution rules eliminate the stretch for non-spousal beneficiaries. You can still leave your IRA to a spouse and they can roll over to their own, but anybody else, they used to take it over their lifetime, pay tax on it as they received it. Now they have to take it within that 10-year period. It also applies, by the way, to other qualified retirement plans other than IRAs, like 401ks, 403b plans, et cetera. And these rules went into effect last January of 2020. So is there another charitable solution that solves the problem for the donor and their heirs? Well, one solution would be you could designate charity as a beneficiary of an IRA. When I was in the financial planning world, I did that a lot. Made them the contingent beneficiary. Could be the favorite charity, their donor advice fund, whatever. And therefore, charities don't pay tax on IRA proceeds when they receive it. Okay, that works. But here's the problem. It doesn't provide any income for the decedent's children or grandchildren, for the heirs, which was the original purpose of the stretch IRA. The donor that was going to do a stretch IRA wasn't going to give any of that to charity to begin with. They were just trying to provide a nice retirement income to their heirs. But there are other charitable options, as you may know, that do provide income for the heirs and will allow us to stretch out that tax liability for them. What are the 2 main instruments that do that? Well, charitable gift annuities, which we're talking about today, and or charitable remainder trust. There's a lot being written and promoted to do testamentary charitable remainder trust today, which we're certainly not opposed to. But there are some size limitations and some issues that kind of arise that maybe we can simplify that if we would also consider doing the similar thing through a testamentary charitable gift annuity. Before I get into that, remember, most of charitable gift annuities are set up when? During lifetime. You set up the annuity, it's in a tax sheltered environment, you get income for the life of the donor. At the donor's death, it all goes to charity. That's a standard lifetime gift annuity. Fixed income, get a tax deduction, etc. So when you turn that into a testamentary charitable gift annuity, testamentary means it goes into effect when? Not during life, but at the death of the donor. So at the donor's death, we're going to set up a charitable gift annuity for someone else. And so to do that, we simply name a nonprofit that's going to issue a gift annuity as the beneficiary of the retirement plan assets. And you have to detail the terms of the gift annuity in that beneficiary designation. And you have to have a special agreement that says, oh, well, we don't know when this is going to go into effect. So what rate is the annuity going to pay? Well, we refer in our agreements to whatever the ACGA, American Council on Gift Annuity rate, is in effect at the death of the donor. but we don't know when that death is going to occur. So you have to create formulas. This is a specialized gift annuity contract that you have to create. Now, you can still name only one or two annuitants to receive fixed life income payments from the annuity. So if I have 3 grandchildren, I can actually do 3 testamentary CGAs individually naming them. At the end of those annuitants' lifetime, of course, then whatever is left in the CGA supports your organization, just like any standard lifetime CGA would have. The issue is you have to wait until the heir's death, not until the donor's death. But under the old system, if they pushed everything out as a stretch IRA, you were going to get 0 out of that. You weren't going to get a thing. Okay, so here. So here's some tips. We want to give the donors a special language to insert in their IRA beneficiary designation. That's kind of an issue depending on who the custodian is. So you got to work with these IRA custodians. Great fun, I understand, and they're all a little different, but that's what's going to drive the funding of this testamentary gift annuity. It's not going to be their will, it's going to be the language in that beneficiary designation. So you're going to have to help the custodian, the IRA custodian, with that. They're not going to know what you're talking about normally, okay? The language should even reference to the ACGA rates. It's the last one we did, the beneficiary designation was over 2 pages long. And that was with a major wirehouse out of New York. And after a while, they said, yep, we'll approve that. Okay, here you go. But you can't use their standard form is the point. Now, if you don't have a CGA program in-house for your nonprofit, you consider working with a third party. And of course, we'd volunteer for that, National Gift Annuity Foundation. That's what we do. We provide outsourced gift annuity services for any nonprofit, large or small. So here are the problems that we solve with the testamentary charitable gift annuity. It protects your heirs from the tax man. They don't have to take this IRA proceeds after your death within that 10-year period, maybe when they're in a higher tax bracket. But from your perspective as a donor, it also may help them from spending all of your IRA money on that classic car, on that sailboat, or on the vacation to Puerto Vallarta. So in effect, it kind of controls it even more than the old stretch IRA did. And of course, it's more cost effective, in my opinion, to set up a testamentary CGA, especially for smaller IRA amounts, than to pay for setting up and administering a testamentary charitable remainder unit trust. Because to set up a T-CRUT, what do you have to do? You have to create that document. Today, if I'm 70 and I'm inclined to live to 90, I'm going to spend money with my attorney to create that document, put it on the shelf for 20 years. And then when I die, it goes into effect. That doesn't feel real good to me. But with a TCGA, I don't have any expense because there's no cost to set up a testamentary charitable gift annuity. So it's considerably less expensive than a CRT, especially for smaller amounts. And when I say smaller amounts up to maybe 500,000 or $1 million, it would probably really work well with a CGA. When you get beyond that, you still might want to consider a testamentary CRT. And of course, it's a lot less time consuming to set up and administer because the charity does all the work for you. You don't have to worry about finding a trustee and all that stuff that goes along with a testamentary charitable remainder trust. And of course, the administrative costs are usually much lower as a result. So now you got to remember, a testamentary charitable remainder trust pays out a fixed percentage on a moving value that changes each year. So there's some inflation protection in a testamentary charitable remainder trust, but a testamentary CGA pays out a fixed dollar amount for the life of the annuity. It doesn't change ever. Once it's set, that dollar amount never changes and there is no inflation protection. So we need to be aware of that if you're trying to make a choice between a testamentary CRT or a testamentary CGA. It's kind of interesting. A testamentary CGA does not have a minimum payout requirement like a CRT does, which means that possibly younger beneficiaries could benefit from the IRA to CGA at death strategy through a testamentary CGA that may even be possible with a CRT. So, you know, if a testamentary CGA is appropriate for your donor situation, here's what the terms need to include in this agreement. Who are the annuitants going to be? You have to name them by name. They have to be living currently, and they have to have a birth date and a social security number and an address. And then age at which the rate of the annuity will be based. In our case, we always list that it's going to be with the ACGA rate in effect during the month of the year of the donor's death, regardless of when the assets are spit out from the custodian of the IRA. And then the payment's going to be quarterly, semi-annual, annual, just like you would do on a lifetime annuity. You have to put that right in the annuity agreement for the testamentary annuity. And then what charity or charities are the remaining assets going to go to following the annuitant's death. If you're a nonprofit issuing your own, you probably list one charity there. If you're a nonprofit, that some of the larger universities will split it with others. You can do that with National Gift Annuity Foundation. We can name multiple charities to receive the assets at the annuitant's death. So here's our example. Here we have Sarah Smith. She's retired and now she's 75. And she's got an IRA worth $100,000. Okay. She's got her one and only favorite granddaughter, Rachel. Rachel Olson is 35 years old currently, and she wants Rachel to receive her IRA at Sarah's passing. And she also wants to leave a legacy gift, a plan gift to her favorite nonprofit. These are her objectives. And so, so here we have an IRA owner age 75, a grandchild age 35. So what we do is Sarah finds a charity that's willing to issue a testamentary CGA today, knowing that it may not be funded for quite a number of years until Sarah dies. And then she designates the charity as the beneficiary of the IRA account. That has to be done right away. When you're writing up the CGA, you have to immediately change the beneficiary on her IRA to the charity issuing the CGA. Then they stipulate in the contract that it's contingent upon the IRA beneficiary designation remaining in place and on the transfer of the IRA account to charity. So Sarah could set up this testamentary CGA today with National Gift Annuity Foundation or any organization that wants to issue it, and goes and changes her beneficiary at the custodian for her IRA. And 5 years later, she could change that beneficiary again to move it to XYZ nonprofit or her new boyfriend or whoever she wants to change it to. As a result of her death, there's no money there to fund the testamentary CGA. So in the agreement, you have to make certain that everyone's clear as to the funding will only be there if that IRA beneficiary designation remains in place to the CGA. So in this case, Sarah dies when she's 95, 20 years later. The IRA custodian passes the proceeds that's left in the IRA to the charity that's on the beneficiary designation on file with that charity. And immediately we're going to start issuing annuity payments to Rachel, who's now 55 at the prevailing rates at that time for a 55-year-old. So in this case, Rachel will then receive an income stream from the CGA for the rest of her life. And finally, when Mrs. Olson dies, then not when Miss Olson, that's Rachel. When Rachel dies, remember Rachel's 55 now, if she lives another 20 years later, then the residual amount's going to be passed to charity. So you got to kind of think in terms of generational ethics here and how that's going to go. You're going to be, it's a delayed plan gift for you, the charity, there's no question about that, but it's better than no plan gift, which is what they would have had they left the IRA directly to anyone other than your testamentary CGA. Sometimes you might have to have a deferred CGA in this case, because at National Gift Annuity Foundation, our minimum age for issuing payments is 55. We could leave it to Rachel at her age 35, but we'd have to defer it until she's 55 before we could even start paying it out in case her grandmother died tomorrow. Okay, so that's possible to do it that way. And even in a CRT situation, I don't know how you do that for a young recipient, because if you're too young on a CRT, that you don't meet the 10% remainder test. So we could do that through these TCGA agreements. National Gift Annuity Foundation spent several $1,000s with attorneys to get a document that's going to work for this. We can't use our standard CGA, lifetime CGA document. So deferral can work, and it would work quite well in this case, especially if grandma died before granddaughter was 55. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Brian, and he's going to give you the number 3 advanced CGA program called Crypto Gift Annuities. Brian?
Thank you, John. Tons of questions. I'm typing as fast as I can. So maybe what you can do, John, is make sure my answers are correct. That's always helpful.
Okay.
But in the Q&A side, maybe go through those. There might be 2 or 3 of those that you might call out, so we should have a bit of time for
Okay.
some questions or clarifications. One thing, and I put in there, which I thought was kind of interesting, in the Q&A, we're talking about the impact annuity. And by the way, and I don't know if this went to everybody. I hope it did. Actually, it looks just so Lynn IRD, who's on, so she's at good friend at Penn. She's actually doing a CGP talk just on this, and so her version's a little bit different than what we talked about. The wonderful thing is there are, I think, sort of 2 or 3 different permutations to this, and might differ based on institution or might differ based on donor as well. And so she has some comments here. Maybe what we can definitely do, Lynn, is I will cut and paste sort of your piece in the chat. I think this just went to the panelists, not all attendees, so we'll include that in what we send out as well to give them the benefit there. But one thing on the giving back a certain period of time in terms of the initial annuity payments, I had mentioned in the Q&A that I know that Yale has, I think it was a donor, he may have passed away now, but we talked with their folks a while back. I think he had 50 or 60, could have been more than that, CGAs, and he loved CGAs. And so what he would do is, let's say you got 50 of them, that means you're getting, let's say, annual payments. He gets 50 annual payments, that's probably pretty chunky, and he mushes them, and then he does another CGA. Now he's got 51, and so on. They just do it every year, just kind of go through. And so that's sort of not exactly an impact CGA, but the whole point is that he's getting that income, and he's actually then just giving that income back, not outright like with an impact annuity, but just for another gift annuity itself. So lots of different ways of being able to do that. So on the crypto side, so a couple things. We've had, I think, 2 now, 3 inquiries. One was pretty serious around Bitcoin, and so how would you actually fund that with Bitcoin? So John, if you can advance the screen, I'll just go through this briefly. Like John mentioned, on the Testamentary CGA stretch solution, we have a full life-altering hour on that we recorded last summer. So John did a lot of research there, and we had a lot of legal work that we put in prior, as he mentioned as well. And so we did the same thing for crypto, and so that one was about where it is now, and then into the winter and early spring, it went through the roof, doubled, and now it's basically back where it was when we did the original one. So a lot of the graphs are going to be pretty similar if you watch that. But bottom line is it's free. Again, it's one of, I think, 12 or so webinars that we have, so if you want to go deeper into it. Bottom line is this, you've got more and more donors who have crypto. I do a lot of these appraisals. I see what their cost basis is on these donations, and it is crazy, crazy, crazy low, like crazy low. We did one, I think a guy had $180 per Bitcoin, and at that point it was trading for $45,000. I mean, so it was chunky. Now we're seeing a fair amount of CRT activity. And I've had a couple people ask, wait a minute, why would you do crypto? Aren't these all young donors? That is not the case. That may have been the case 5-10 years ago. One of the largest gifts that I've ever worked on was about an $880,000 crypto gift for a grandmother in Northwest Arkansas. She was 76. So this is not perhaps what everybody has the vision of, the hacker-looking person who's 27 years old surviving on Cheetos sort of deal. This has become much more institutional and much more broadly owned. And so for those people that want to have a fixed income, then they can obviously do the gift annuity. The charity would have to have their own wallet, so in essence their own account. We can do this through Decami and National Gift Annuity Foundation, and or people can just defer it. So maybe you do have a 30-year-old, maybe you do have a 40-year-old that has large gain, might say, for some of this I want to cash some of these chips in. What can I do? In particular, if I'd like to defer this out maybe for supplemental retirement income or sort of longevity insurance, let's push this out to, we're seeing this more and more, push this out to maybe 75 or 80, and maybe I'm 40 now. The deduction on that is crazy high. So it might be 80-85% deduction because of this huge deferral. So in some cases, they're able to use that against other gain that they have from crypto or any other asset. But they've also, in essence, just put in place longevity insurance, which means if I make it to 80, who knows, but if I make it there, then this spigot's going to go full bore. If I don't need it when I get there, I could just revoke some or all of that interest at that point in time as well. If I do need it, well, now I've got this spigot coming in at age 80, sort of the tail mortality risk of if I'm 80, 85, 90, maybe use that to pay for long-term care, who knows what. So it's more of a longevity insurance type hedge as an example. So the bottom line is it's very possible for crypto to be used to fund CGAs. I know of at least 20 to 30 on the CRT side, but it's already starting the chatter around CGAs. The point is it is possible. So John, next slide, we're talking about what the solution is. And as I mentioned, making the gift to the wallet can be immediate or deferred. Can also, as I mentioned, be a CRT where Decamai Foundation can serve as trustee. Usually we only do it on illiquid or complex gifts, all things being equal. But in this case, let's imagine that the donor made the crypto transfer. We can then sell that and then reinvest in the NGAF diversified portfolio for what it is worth. We actually track through the indexes the model ACGA allocation because, again, we're issuing at full maximum suggested rates anyway. So we are 40% equity, 55% fixed, 5% cash. Got that burned into my skull for the NGAF model investment allocation. So we track that as closely as we possibly can. And as I mentioned here too, could you, let's go crazy, have a crypto gift made for a CGA, part of a campaign, now it's an impact CGA? Yes. So this is really the funding side versus the outcome side. I guess technically a bit of a stretch, but there are a number, believe it or not, of IRA custodians now positioning themselves as crypto IRA custodians, so other sort of non-traditional type assets. A number of them have been around for a while, so you can have real estate or other types of things that perhaps more traditional custodians would not want to have. So now back to some extent, the Testamentary Stretch IRA that might have had crypto inside the IRA could be, I guess, theoretically in kind transferred over. Same thing. Now you've got the stretch to the next generation, as sort of John mentioned. My only point in this is that sort of multiple assets can be used, and crypto is not only on the table for outright gifts, definitely for CRTs, but now, again, more and more, people are talking about, what would this mean for a CGA? Could that be done? It'd be much simpler. This deferral piece is a big, big deal, being able to do that as well. Testamentary gifts, much, much more complicated. So we've not all, I think, as a planning community, gotten a lot of guidance or comfort, frankly, in that space, because the whole point about it being in your estate, whether that's in what's called a hot wallet, whether that's in cold storage, what does that mean? Do you have the private key? How is that physically transferred over? So there's a whole estate planning community now that are creating specialists in how you actually do these crypto transfers, not so much during life, although that's one component, but also it's sort of at death. Interestingly, the estimates, who knows, but about 20 to 30%, again, are the estimates that all Bitcoin that has been mined to date has been actually lost. So you probably heard about the poor guy who mined a whole bunch of it, had it on a hard drive, had an additional hard drive that looked exactly the same, kept the wrong one, and put the one with all of the Bitcoin, it was like, who cares, it's $100 each, went into literally a landfill somewhere in rural England. You probably read all about this stuff. And I think he was saying, look, now it's worth some crazy, like $60 million, some huge number. And so he was begging the town council to let him dig up the landfill to find his hard wallet. The point is, in fact, Ryan Raffin, one of my partners, I think on the call here today too, is our lead compliance attorney, but he was actually engaged by an insurance company. And so it was like, look, this person had the Bitcoin on their hard drive in cold storage. California fires came along, burned the house. Unfortunately, I don't think anybody was hurt, which is great. But Bitcoin gone, like gone. And so now is subject to how much was there, what was the value at that time, and then sort of subject to what the insurance claim otherwise would be. So it's a brave new world. So I have a whole other webinar just on that. But the point is that the whole issue of sort of the transfer through testamentary planning, whether it's charity or otherwise, is still a bit difficult to navigate sort of at this point. So that's really it on crypto, other than to say it's available and out there. So the upcoming webinar, we're going to have a couple other Q&A here in a second too. But I know you've been so riveted by John's commentary and hopefully some of this content too, that we're going to do This Isn't Your Grandfather CGA Part 2 for more advanced CGA solutions. So a term of years commuted CGA, which just came up on a case about a week ago, frankly, and it was in LGBTQ sort of month here. It was one where they said they had a non-traditional spouse and wanted to be able to have a 10-year payment, but keep it super, super simple. And so the whole question was, can you do that as a commuted, in essence, a term of years testamentary CGA? And so worked through some of those issues. This spendthrift testamentary CGA, we are seeing gigantic, worked on one that was $28 million, where the father said, I love my two daughters. At this point, they were in their 60s. And what I want to do is just leave them, rather than setting up a spendthrift trust, I'm just going to do a giant $14 million each testamentary CGA. If either of them pass away early, that is, that'd be horrible. But then all of the residuum goes right back to my charity anyway. It's kind of like a Q-tip sort of model. And if they live a long time, then that's going to continue making those payments to them. So it's a way that he's able to have a fixed payment based on their age at that time, just like the testamentary CGA John mentioned on the IRA side. But we're seeing this a lot more, and so that's very interesting from a planning standpoint. S-Corp debt finance UBIT CGA, so we have sort of a special way of being able to handle S-Corps. In particular this year, there can be up to a 100% deduction for a UBIT in special situations. So it could be, as long as it's received and sold this year for a CGA, there's no unrelated business taxable income at that level. So we're seeing having a lot of conversation around that. Never mind debt financed property, in particular real estate, can be used for a CGA. And then this is the one we've seen usually 2-3 times a year. It comes up where if a donor says, listen to this, I'd love to give more to charity, but my CPA is saying I can't use the whole deduction for this year and the 5 carry forward years. Therefore, I'm not going to make the larger gift that otherwise I would want. They're feeling constrained by the 6-year deduction period. And a very simple solution for very high net worth, so we do these on larger transactions, is where they would say, well, wait a minute, why don't I do one chunk of this as an outright gift, one chunk that is a gift annuity? I never want the income. I don't need the income. That's the last thing I want is the income, but I'm going to defer it for maybe 15, 20 years. And I'm going to calibrate it where the deduction that I get for the deferred gift annuity and the deduction I get from the outright gift, when you mush them, I'm going to be able to use that comfortably over a 6-year period. So they do a combo gift, never wanting the income. Now they're in year 7. They've used all their 6 years of deduction, and now their CPA might say, you know what, it'd be great if you'd have a $500,000 deduction this year. And they go, great, I'll just revoke that portion of my life income for the CGA. What does that have? It immediately triggers another $1 million deduction and a new 6-year period. So they could actually say, I am not constrained by this 6-year period. I could make a bunch of gifts now, and believe it or not, I could spread that deduction out over 25, 30 years to fully sop that up, because I can control the timing and the amount that I revoke from my deferred CGA. We're seeing this a lot. Big transactions where they're concerned about losing the tax benefits or savings because they're over-giving, in particular after a business or real estate sale where their income's going to go way down after that. So that's a solution. We'll go deeper into that too. So that will be the July webinar. So John, you want to go through, I guess, some next steps, and maybe more importantly, sort of any questions that come up. I'll do my best here to answer. And John, you may have seen some that have come through that you might want to highlight as well.
Yeah, if you would like to talk to us about how we can help you outsource either impact gift annuities, testamentary CGAs, and or crypto funded annuities, glad to talk to you about that. Doesn't cost anything to visit with us. You can reach me at the National Gift Annuity Foundation, our 800 number. I work on the Des Moines, Iowa office for you Midwesterners. You can reach me at my office there. That's John at nationalgiftannuity.org is my email address to initiate a conversation, set up a time to meet and time to visit. So let's just see, Brian, we've got about 5 minutes. If there's anything we can answer quickly.
Yeah, maybe take a look, John, if you don't mind, in the Q&A side on the answered. So I've answered 21. That's got to be a world record. And I've got 8 still open, so I'm going as fast as I can. But there might be some that have been answered. Got a couple here that I haven't answered. Maybe that's a good way to do it too. But let's see. So in the Testamentary CGA, does the annuitant pay taxes on their annuity payments as you would with a regular CGA? So you want to maybe discuss the ordinary income element of that?
Yes. Unlike a traditional CGA funded with cash, a CGA funded with IRA proceeds at the death of the donor, the recipient is going to have that all taxed as ordinary income, just like they would have had they been able to do the old stretch IRA.
Exactly.
That's what Jim Spencer.
And then let's see. And I guess there are a couple questions around this, which I think is very fair, and that is the whole, if you're talking about the Testamentary CGA, we've done a number of these now. And actually, interesting, one of the first ones we did was actually for a life insurance gift. So it's a life insurance beneficiary designation to a Testamentary CGA. So it doesn't just have to be IRD or retirement plan assets. But a number of comments, again, I think very, very fair, are saying, look, the beneficiary form only has so much room, sort of number one, and how you sort of jamming everything in there. And I sort of mentioned that we usually just include the charity itself, National Gift Annuity Foundation, and then with reference to the gift annuity by sort of side agreement and the MOU in essence, sort of the way that we approach it. But also, again, I sort of big shout out for Johnny Hayes on what she's doing with Rift, and others are as well, trying to get that process a little bit, get that process more lubricated. But this definitely would, to be fair, would fall in under the same challenges, whether this is a direct beneficiary designation to an IRA. It's going to be exactly the same. So from the custodian standpoint, they're just saying, where do we send it? And do you have the sort of legal right to be able to receive the gift? But some of the things here, too, when one person mentions, like, hey, large national charities, just naming the charity as a beneficiary and having a separate letter of instruction on file also involves risks in that, I hope they know where those instructions are. Let's say the donor is not going to pass away in 6 months. It might be, 20 years. And then that the IRA custodian sends out a check to the local, branch directly to the charity that they think, oh, this is just an outright gift. I think that's very fair. So the documentation really on both sides, I think, is particularly important too. That's a good point.
Brian,
anything else, John? I guess on the actual design on the beneficiary.
Here's a good question that came in. It says, what would happen if the donor died with, for example, $10,000 left in her IRA, and the TCGA stipulated that the value was $20,000? That can't happen because we don't stipulate a value in the TCGA contract. It's a formula. It says whatever comes in from the IRA at the death of the donor is going to be the funding amount. So that solves that problem. We don't have to worry about making the adjustments. It's self-adjusting. Hope that helps. Yeah,
to the age as well, because there were a number of these that came in and said, what if they're very young? And basically, again, it trues up through formula, and then perhaps it'd be a deferral to whatever the minimum age is, as an example. So to the extent they're not at that age, then it would simply be deferred.
Yep, we can do it.
Do you post a calendar for upcoming workshops? I do this on the fly. So John saw me 12 minutes before this started actually designing the one for the next month. That's true. Painful to admit on a recording. But the good part of this is, I think and hope, is that we do have about 12 now. When you get the link for this one, you'll see all the past ones, or pretty good ones, I hope, in there. And they're free, so don't complain too much. But we really try to make it really timely. And so as a team, we've got about 16, as I mentioned, and we're working on these kind of weird cases all the time. And if we see any kind of trend, we did one on SPACs, pipes, and NFTs as an example, because we kept getting those questions. We said, okay, if people are asking the questions, let's learn more about them ourselves, but also get that information out. So we try to make it as timely as possible, certainly relative to tax changes or anything else. So I think that's it. I think, we are dead on time.
Right
So
time.
very, very good. We're going to get all of these answered. If I didn't have time to answer your questions, we will answer all of them. And we'll send that back out. But just, again, so appreciative of John, you putting up the slides together and working with me on this particular one. And again, these are three things that I don't think your grandfather at least would have done in the past in terms of the Impact CGA, certainly the Testamentary Stretch IRA solution, and definitely probably not your grandfather at least 10 years ago because they didn't exist 15 years ago on the crypto side. So gift annuities, amazingly simple, understandable for donors, not all the legal costs, you're not getting K1s, they don't fit always, but if you really think about, a 1 or 2 page contract, you give us X, we give you Y, it's very, very powerful, some of the planning and sophistication of the solutions that it can provide. Talked about 3 today. Don't come up all the time, but if they come up once for you, we hope this is, again, helpful information. We'll talk about 4 additional ones next month. But super, super flexible. And any questions you have on CGAs, call John, Mike Carey on our team as well. But anything we can do to help, thanks so much. But thank you for your time today, and wish you the best of luck. Bye-bye.